Good morning. It's 7 o'clock. Breaking news this morning. Israel and Hamas sign off on the first phase of a Gaza peace deal. It's Thursday, 9th of October. A note, a whisper, and a moment in history when the president and the world found out his Gaza peace plan had a breakthrough.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
After the announcement, the celebrations, people taking to the streets in Israel after hearing that all hostages will be returned by Monday, with some reports suggesting as early as Saturday. Hugs and handshakes between negotiators in Egypt, the wait now for Israeli government approval and a subsequent ceasefire. Hamas thanks Donald Trump and the negotiators before asking them not to allow Israel to evade or delay the deal. For Gazans, it signals the beginning of what could be the end of 2 years under siege. Good morning, and we start with breaking news. Israel and Hamas signed off the first phase of President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan. The development has been welcomed around the world as a promising step towards ending the war. And the moment the president found out a breakthrough had been reached was captured live during a news briefing from the White House. Mark Stone reports.
We have Marco Rubio.
The first indication of what would quickly become dramatic developments. Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, leaves a meeting in the White House, a whisper with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who then takes her seat near the president and scribbles on a notepad.
They're smart, but they're not smart enough.
He hands it to the president. It is an immediately iconic image. After days of speculation, the ceasefire deal previewed in a handwritten note visible just to the cameras. Very close, it says, underlined. Then, we need you to approve a Truth Social post soon so you can announce deal first. Just a few words, but they tell the story of this moment, that this is a moment President Trump wants to own, his deal.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
The meeting concluded. Then it took a couple of hours, but the Truth Social post came. I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan, it says. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first step towards a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, both key players in the process, had only arrived at the negotiations in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, hours earlier. Their presence there, a sign of progress. And then emerged more images for the ages. Israeli, Arab, and American negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh celebrating together. Qatar's prime minister and an Israeli general, quite the shot. And celebrations too in Gaza.
Is this the moment? It's incredibly quiet outside. It's the middle of the night. People haven't heard yet, but also it's incredibly quiet from the skies. Come on!
And of course, among the hostage families in Israel and beyond.
Since you became a president.
In the United States, some family members with Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and on the phone with the president.
Our home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
In a statement on X, the Israeli Prime Minister wrote, "With the approval of the first phase of the plan, all our hostages will be brought home. This is a diplomatic success and a national and moral victory for the state of Israel," he said. The president is expected to travel to the region in the days ahead, probably to Israel to coincide with the hostages coming home. Quite the optics for the self-styled peacemaker president, who can now maybe claim that tag, if it all holds.
We need to look into the details, Mark.
Speaking to Sky's Trump 100 podcast, the longtime advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization reserved his optimism.
We still don't know what are the changes that were made in Sharm el-Sheikh. But if the details are based on what we already know, I think the first phase could perfectly work. The first phase spoke about a release of all the Israeli captives from Gaza and a release of Palestinian prisoners from the Israeli side, which is also an important point. Who are those people that are going to be released? What are the names? Will Marouane al-Barghouthi, for example, the most popular Palestinian politician, be released from Israeli jails or not? I mean, that would be extremely significant. But once again, I think it's still too early to make a big celebration or just to declare that the war is over.
An Israeli commentator, Nadav Eyal, was equally uneasy about the long-term success.
I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen there. But what we do see here is an involvement for the first time of Arab countries from across the region. Moderate Arab countries, not so moderate Arab countries, and they're going to be involved in what's going to happen in Gaza, in rebuilding Gaza. And this gives me hope because they have the legitimacy that Israel does not have to operate within Gaza.
But the region has woken up today with an unquestionable shift after tens of thousands have died, compromise and agreement. Words so hard to find here for so long, they were found in Egypt overnight. Events over the days ahead will be pivotal. One man in the Oval Office is taking this as his moment. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Well, overnight, Hamas released this statement. Let's just show you. The Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, confirms that it has submitted lists of Palestinian prisoners according to the criteria agreed upon in the agreement. And they say, we are awaiting final agreement on the names in preparation for announcing them to our people through the prisoners' media office once the relevant procedures and understandings are completed. Hamas renews its pledge to our brave prisoners and their families that they will remain at the heart of its priorities and will not rest until the last prisoner is freed. The group representing the hostages held in Gaza have said this. The families of the hostages receive news of the agreement signing to return all 48 hostages with a mix of excitement, anticipation and concern. The Hostages Families Forum welcomes the signing of this agreement designed to bring all the hostages home, the living and to rehabilitate with their families, and the deceased for proper burial in their homeland. This represents important and meaningful progress towards bringing everyone home, but our struggle is not over and will not end until the last hostage returns. The hostage families wish to express their profound gratitude to President Trump and his team for the leadership and determination that led to this historic breakthrough, an end to the war and a comprehensive agreement to return all of the hostages. Well, let's just take a look at the 20-point peace plan in a bit more detail. It calls for all hostages alive and deceased to be returned and the bombing by Israel to stop. Israel would then release 250 Palestinians serving life sentences plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after the October the 7th attacks. The text also says Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence with Israel and to putting down their weapons will be given amnesty and allowed safe passage out of Gaza if they want to leave. Gaza would be run temporarily by an apolitical Palestinian committee. This would be overseen by a so-called Board of Peace chaired by President Trump. Other board members are to include Tony Blair. Under the terms of the plan, Israel would not occupy or annex Gaza. The delivery of aid into Gaza would increase through the United Nations and the Red Crescent, with no interference from either side. The plan also contains a Trump economic development plan aimed at rebuilding Gaza. The proposal stresses that no one will be forced out of Gaza, while those who wish to leave will be able to do so and be free to return. Now, just in the last few minutes, we've heard that the Israeli Security Cabinet and government meetings on Gaza agreement has been pushed back by 2 hours to 1700 local time. That's 1400 GMT. That's sources stating this who have been briefed on the details of the agreement. So we're waiting for the Israeli Security Cabinet to approve this deal. And from what we understand, the Israeli security and cabinet meetings will then approve the release of any Palestinian prisoners. And based on that, these phases can start to be rolled out. Let's bring in Alex Rossi, who joins us from Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. Alex, I mean, this is quite a moment. I was in Hostage Square on October the 7th, just a couple of days ago. There was this kind of quiet optimism at the time, and they've finally gotten what they want.
Yeah, it's taken 2 long and very brutal years indeed, but this has been the focus really of campaigning against the government to try to get Benjamin Netanyahu to change tack, really, with how he was prosecuting the war. His position, remember, Yalda, was always the only way that you're going to bring Hamas to the table and get an agreement is if they are under fire. They are feeling, you know, the sword or Israel's military sword at their neck. The argument here that people were making was actually, no, you need to just get the hostages out first. You need to save the lives of those people. So here, I think, you know, the people are here. There were plenty of people when the news was announced last night that an agreement had been reached. It's a little bit fewer people this morning. We had a bit of rain, which probably stopped people coming out, but we are expecting large crowds to gather. Have a look over here. You can see there's a digital clock. That, of course, has reminded and focused people's minds about what this is all about. Why coming here to protest? 733 days, 3 hours, 39 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. That's how long the hostages have been held. Over here, you can see here, up here, there's still a picture. These are the 48 hostages that still remain in Gaza. That's what this, for these people here anyway, at least, it's been all about. 20 of them are still living, 28 of them are no longer alive. Now, it's the kind of understanding of the agreement that within 72 hours, the hostages will be released. I think that timeline is going to slip a little bit, certainly to get the bodies of the hostages that still remain in Gaza, because Hamas does not control some of those areas. They don't know where all of those bodies are, so they have to locate them. But we expect the 20 living hostages to come out pretty soon. Hamas is saying over the weekend, we heard from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he was saying that it could be Monday, but we expect movements on that very, very quickly. Now, we think the agreement will be signed sometime around midday in Sharm el-Sheikh. That, of course, will be conditional on the Israeli government approving it, a cabinet. That, of course, is expected, but only then, after that political process has been completed, can it be implemented. But really, I think overall here, people are massively relieved that they've got to this stage and that you are now going to see an end to the bloodshed in Gaza and a release of the hostages. They have campaigned and protested for this to happen for many days, weeks and months. And now, of course, it's coming true. The hostages, we expect, will be coming back to Israel very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of these hostage families say that finally now feels attainable. Alex, I just want to show our viewers the skyline over Gaza at the moment, those live shots. In the early hours of this morning, there were some reports that explosions could be heard. We can also see in the far distance some plumes of smoke. By no means has the bombardment necessarily stopped, because the ceasefire itself hasn't come into effect as yet, although earlier in the week, you recall, Alex, President Trump had said to Benjamin Netanyahu that he really needed to scale back, which I believe has happened. The intensity, the ferocity of the bombardment that we had seen over the course of the last couple of years I'm just going to now take our viewers to listen to Sir Keir Starmer, who's currently speaking live in Mumbai. You can see him there meeting with Prime Minister Modi. He's on an official state visit, and those live shots are coming through. Let's see if we can have a listen to what is being said at the moment. Looks like the press is being pushed out of that meeting, that bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and Narendra Modi. Of course, he is there on an official state visit to India. Let's go back to Alex Rossi, because we were talking, Alex, just a few moments ago about Gaza. Let's show our viewers those images, and we can see the skyline over Gaza. It feels relatively quiet, although by no means has the bombardment ended there. At this moment, we can see plumes of smoke in the background, and there were some explosions heard overnight.
Yeah, it was fascinating, wasn't it, when Hamas announced that they conditionally had agreed to the Trump peace plan. You had this moment where Donald Trump kind of took to social media and commanded Israel to stop the bombing. The president of another country ordering a prime minister of another country, albeit a close ally, to stop the bombing. Now, the bombing has continued in Gaza since that moment, but Israel, the IDF, says that they went to a defensive posture, so that the campaign that they were doing in Gaza City, they were encircling Gaza City and threatening to take it, move in completely. They reverted to a defensive posture. But we know from speaking to people inside Gaza that actually the bombing did continue, albeit at a reduced level. So, yes, the expectation is there will be skirmishes, there will be a continuation of the fighting over the next few hours, until that deal is inked. Once it's inked, according to the Trump peace plan, the fighting will stop immediately. The 72 hours, as dictated by Trump's peace plan, will then kick in, and you will then start seeing movement towards getting the hostages out. It's worth bearing in mind, Yalda, that Israel has already put in place a plan and is ready to get the hostages out as soon as that can possibly happen. So they're already putting in place the logistics necessary to get people out and get them back to, they'll first go to hospitals, probably close here to Tel Aviv, and then they'll be reunited with their families. But that is already being put in place. But yes, we would expect there still to be skirmishes. In fact, one of the commanders in the Israeli Defense Force has warned Gazans not to return to areas that are still, and they stress, active combat zones. So we would not expect the ceasefire to come in until that deal is inked.
Alex, thank you so much for all of your reporting. And of course, we will be coming back to you throughout the day. I imagine Hostage Square will start to fill up as the news sinks in for so many people across this country. And of course, in Gaza, that finally this moment of a ceasefire, hostages coming back, aid trickling into Gaza, the moment that so many have been waiting for, has finally potentially arrived. And of course, we are expecting President Donald Trump to arrive in the region as well. Kamali, I'm going to hand over back to you, and we'll be here on standby in the next few minutes to continue our special coverage of this momentous occasion.
All right, Yalda and team, thank you for that. Of course, more from Alex as well in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv throughout the morning. But let's get now the view of the UK government. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the Work and Pension Secretary, Pat McFadden. Pat McFadden, morning to you, and great to have you with us. A huge day. Talk to us about how the UK government's feeling about this moment, because we're still not quite there, are we, that all signed off?
We're not fully there, but we're very hopeful. And I think the world wakes up this morning with more hope about this situation than has been the case for the past 2 years, since October the 7th, a couple of years ago. This is a really big moment for the world. In the short term, what everybody wants to see is all the hostages alive or dead, released from Gaza, more humanitarian aid going in to help the people of Gaza. And that's a huge prize in itself. But the bigger prize, the really big prize, is not just to stop what's been happening for the last 2 years and to release the hostages, but actually to have a more secure future there. So I think the biggest excitement about this comes with that possibility.
OK, let's take those in turn then. The hostage release. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this was going to be done by the Feast of the Tabernacle, which I think ends on the 13th of October. He has said, or it's been announced by sources through Reuters, that this is due to be done by Monday latest, Saturday at the earliest. Is there anything that the UK government can do to ensure that that continues as a time frame?
Well, I heard the President Trump talking about the same time frame overnight. He talked about Monday. The families of the hostages have been through so much pain, in many cases not knowing if their relatives were dead or alive. And I think that this is going to be such an important moment when those hostages are released. I wish it was today, I wish it was tomorrow, but if it's Monday, that would be tremendous news.
Because there is still stuff that can go wrong, I imagine, up to that point.
There is.
People can renege on their agreement.
Yes, and that's why the hope that we are feeling is always tempered by that. But I do think it's a big moment for the world. The first step has to be the release of the hostages. Then, of course, the people of Gaza themselves have been living in terrible circumstances. Many people have been killed. The whole place is going to need to be rebuilt. But the first thing will be that humanitarian aid should go in to stabilise the situation there, make sure people have got enough to eat, medical supplies, basic shelter, and then build from there.
On to that point then, your second point about the amount of aid going in. We know as part of Trump's 20-point plan that he says at a minimum, or the plan states, at a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what's included in the 19th of January 2025 agreement. That is not quite the aid quantities that were going in before the war. Will the UK government be doing anything to ramp up, increase the amount of aid going in? You already laid out how much is needed.
Look, we want to see the aid going in. There are terrible humanitarian circumstances there on the food front, on the medical front, on the shelter front. I think if this ceasefire holds, the international community, including the UK very prominently, will rally round, will supply the aid, get that aid in, and do everything we can to do that. That's in all our interests, and we will play our part.
Can more money be given to UNRWA to do this? I know that funding has been re-established.
I'm sure it could, but I don't actually think money's been the obstacle here. I think it's been the security situation on the ground. And I think if we have peace, then there'll be a lot of money behind first an aid effort and then a rebuilding effort.
I just want to push you a little bit more on getting more aid in. Is there anything else that you would want to see the UK government specifically doing to get aid in? I know you'll work through the auspices of the agencies that are there, but I'm talking about, for us particularly, to be getting more aid in.
We'll play our part. As I say, I don't think the financing of aid has been the real obstacle. It's been the security situation. Once we get the security situation sorted, we can get the aid in. And that's going to be so important. We're coming to the winter months. People need shelter, they need food, they need medical supplies. Let's hope that this ceasefire holds so that all of those things can happen.
Let's move on to the next piece then that you mentioned. And it's incredible we can start now, I guess, thinking about that day after, right? It's already sort of laid out in some detail in the Trump 20-point plan. How do you foresee, how does the UK government foresee the next few weeks and months going, should it all hold in place?
Well, I think this is the most exciting possibility of all. If I go back to a couple of decades ago, there was great hope at the time through the Oslo Agreement that there would be a grand bargain, a grand peace between Israel and Palestine, which would, of course, be very positive for the Middle East as a whole. To be honest, in recent years, that hope hasn't been there. There's been no process to speak of. And you've had this cycle at its most intense in the last 2 years, but even before the last 2 years, this cycle of hostilities, rocket attacks from Gaza into Israel, retaliation from Israel, and it just seemed quite a hopeless situation. For me, the most exciting thing about the last couple of weeks is not just the possibility of a ceasefire, but the possibility that that hopelessness can be displaced by something bigger. So you referred a few moments ago to the 20-point plan released by President Trump a couple of weeks ago. That isn't just about a ceasefire. That's about a longer-term future, about rebuilding with the backing of the United States, the backing of the UK, the backing of Arab states in the region. That's a very exciting possibility for the world and, in the most immediate and direct sense, for the people in Gaza themselves.
What will the UK government do to ensure that that board of peace, Sir Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, may well be a part of that, says he will be, and that others may well join it, that it has enough representation of Palestinians? This is a concern within the region, as you know, that there aren't enough Palestinians involved in what will become the immediate day after if the fighting is to stop. Disparagingly, Blair's been called the governor of Gaza going forward. I mean, how will the UK government ensure that there is enough representation?
Look, he has immense experience. After he left office, he was heavily involved in the Middle East as part of the quartet that was working on these issues at the time, about 10, 15 years ago. So he's got immense experience in this. Israel will be clear that Hamas can't run Gaza in the future, but it shouldn't be a permanent Israeli-run area either. So it has to be in the long term run by Palestinians. In the meantime, something will be put together to stabilise, begin to get the rebuilding effort going, and in the longer term, run by the Palestinians themselves. That's the exciting prospect here. And it's a prospect, as I say, that hasn't existed in a real sense for a long, long time. And I think that's why there's so much hope this morning at this news. It's not just the short term, it's the long term too.
One more specific on this before I wanted to move on to some other topics, Pat McFadden, with your indulgence. A number of children, at least 10 children, have arrived here in the UK for medical treatment in recent weeks, along with 50 companions. How do you foresee the future of those children? Will they get to stay here?
Well, it may depend on the situation in Gaza, the long-term future, but we thought we should do our part in a humanitarian way to treat some of the most severely injured children in Gaza, where the medical facilities just couldn't treat them. It's a relatively small number, but it's important to those children and to their families. In terms of their long-term status, that will depend on the situation in Gaza itself, and of course their own intentions. In the immediate sense, we want to treat these children who've been traumatised by, and in some cases, very badly injured by war.
Can you foresee more Palestinians being able to come to the UK? Because, as you point out, Gaza is decimated. There is nowhere for them to live.
It is decimated, but there's more hope for it this morning than there has been for a long time. And I think most people in Gaza want to be able to live a life in Gaza. Now, amid all the rubble and dereliction that's there at the moment, that looks bleak, but it also looks hopeful because we now have the prospect of a proper rebuilding process. And that's not a prospect that we've had not only for 2 years, but in terms of a proper peace for a long time before that.
A couple more questions, specifics, and they'll be quick if you don't mind, on other topics. The China spy scandal, the government have said they're disappointed that they weren't able to follow through on the prosecution. Isn't it true, though, as Ken MacDonald, the former DPP, says, that the standard was actually lowered, so there are still questions to answer as to why this prosecution was not followed through?
Well, prosecutions are a decision for the Director of Public Prosecution. And as the Prime Minister made clear in comments he made in his visit to India, these charges were brought at a time under the last government, and the evidence has to be provided under the rules at the time.
When the Secretary asked the government for more evidence, can you have provided that?
We can provide any evidence that the DPP wants, but it will be evidence around what was happening at the time, not what's happening now. And ultimately, it's his decision as to whether or not a prosecution goes ahead.
And last final point, the Prime Minister is in India. There are calls from the family of Jagtar Singh Johal to have his case raised. I know you know it well because it's been you've talked about a lot. Will the Prime Minister do that, and will we see Mr. Singh Johal released soon?
Well, I'm familiar with this case. It's been raised with me by many constituents. The Prime Minister has spoken about this case at the time. For viewers who are not familiar with this, Mr. Johal has been held in prison without ever coming to trial for a number of years now. 2017. It's a long, long time. So we've always said to the Indian authorities, either bring a trial or let the person go. It's, you know, the principles of justice shouldn't be that someone is held for many years at a time without trial. So I think his case is well known. It means a lot to a lot of people here in the UK.
And will you be raising it with the Prime Minister of India? That's the question.
Well, I don't know what will be raised in their discussions, but the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, has raised this case before.
Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, well, there's still plenty more, of course, to come here on Sky News as we continue our coverage of the announcement of a major breakthrough between Israel and Hamas in terms of peace in Gaza. As we said, the Prime Minister is in India with Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister. We expect to hear from Sir Keir Starmer very soon.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
We arrive, a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. I'm Yalda Hakim, live here in Jerusalem, and let's go straight to our breaking news. Donald Trump has announced that Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first phase of the Gaza peace plan. Reuters is reporting that a ceasefire is now expected to come into effect in Gaza once a deal is signed, citing a source briefed on the details of the agreement. World leaders have been reacting to the news, including the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Let's get more reaction on this from our political correspondent, Mari Arora. Mari, the Prime Minister, of course, is in India at the moment. About 20 minutes ago or so, we saw him in that bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi, but he has already reacted. Just talk us through that statement.
Yeah, absolutely, Yalda. He is in India really for a kind of trade meeting and blitz with a huge delegation. But nonetheless, he has the time to react to this incredibly massive news. So let me read you what the Prime Minister has said so far. He said, "I welcome the news that a deal has been reached on the first stage of President Trump's peace plan in Gaza. This is a moment of profound relief that will be felt all around the world, but particularly for the hostages, their families, and for the civilian population of Gaza, who have all endured unimaginable suffering over the last 2 years. I am grateful for the tireless diplomatic efforts of Egypt, Qatar, Turkey and the United States, supported by our regional partners in securing the crucial first step. This agreement must now be implemented in full without delay and accompanied by the immediate lifting of all restrictions on life-saving humanitarian aid to Gaza." He then goes on to say, we call on all parties to meet the commitments they have made to end the war and to build the foundations for a just and lasting end to the conflict and a sustainable path for a long-term peace. The UK will support these crucial immediate steps and the next stage of talks to ensure the full implementation of the peace plan. And we're going to be expecting to hear from the Prime Minister within the next hour or so, where he's going to be giving remarks relating to Gaza as part of that joint statement while he is in India as well. So not long, hopefully, to wait until we get fresh comments from him once again.
Mari, thank you so much for that update. And we're just looking at some live pictures there of the delegation from the UK who are travelling with the Prime Minister to Mumbai for trade talks, amongst other things. And we saw earlier the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, sitting down with Narendra Modi, but he put out that statement that Mari has just talked us through. Let's show you some live pictures of the skyline over Gaza now as well, because while so many people here in Israel, frankly, the entire nation celebrating this moment where the hostages will finally come home after that horrific October 7, the fateful terrorist attack that took place on October the 7th, of course, which changed the lives of millions of Gazans, millions of Palestinians as well. You're looking at those live shots of Gaza now over the skyline, and you can see that plume of smoke because the airstrikes haven't ended. This ceasefire hasn't come into effect. We are expecting the Israeli cabinet to meet to sign the deal off, which would include the release of Palestinian prisoners, and then we will start to see the first phase of this agreement being implemented. But just as Mari was reading the statement there from the Prime Minister, other world leaders are also reacting to this. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has said that she welcomes the announcement of an agreement to secure a ceasefire and the release of hostages in Gaza that's based on the proposal put forward by the US President. This very much has been Donald Trump's peace deal. He proposed it to Arab and Muslim majority leaders just a couple of weeks ago in New York. His team had been working with their teams and had been working closely with the Israelis as well. And then the pressure began to mount on the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu as well as on Hamas. And within the space of just 48 hours, we saw this deal being announced. So a lot of relief for many, many people. And throughout the day, we will continue to hear statements from global leaders reacting to this historic moment. I'm joined now by Maoz Enon, an Israeli peace activist who lost both his parents in the Hamas attack on October the 7th. Maoz, thank you so much for joining us here. I first want to get your reaction, because I know many people in Israel, in Gaza, were up through the night listening to the developments, reading the statements coming out. I just want to get your first reaction to all of this.
So my first reaction, Yalda, and thank you for having me in your show this morning, was to cry. I just woke up in bed and read the news and started crying, because this is what me and so many others, including my siblings and in the peace movement, the Palestinian-Israeli peace movement, are calling since October 7th, to stop the war, to release the hostages through negotiation, and to create a roadmap for a lasting peace. So after 2 years of very hard work in Israel, in Palestine, and around the world, we see that it's actually going to happen. And our work is only started. And now we need to make sure that we're also creating hope for the people in Gaza, to envision a better future for the civilians in Gaza and create a better reality for them, and the same for the West Bank. And the release of the hostages will be a closure within the Israeli people, within Israel, but to bring a closure to the Palestinian, we must ensure a lasting peace, that all Palestinians and Israelis living in equality, living in dignity, and are secure and safe. So the road that just started today is the first step for reaching a lasting peace.
Maoz, these are extraordinary words that I'm hearing from you, talking about lasting peace for both Palestinians, for Israelis to live side by side, so that it isn't just something that is resolved over a few weeks or months, that there is a proper roadmap. For you, this is all very, very personal. You lost both of your parents on October the 7th.
Yes. And 2 days after losing them, my young brother, Magen, who is based in London, asked the family to send a universal message that we are rejecting revenge, that we don't want to revenge the death of our parents by the Hamas. And we want to break the cycle of violence, of fear, of hate, of bloodshed that both Israelis and Palestinians been trapped within for a century. This conflict started about a century ago. And my brother asked and requested our family to pave this path. And on this path that we've been walking now for nearly 2 years, we are able to heal and cure ourselves, because we were broken. And we are still broken.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Maoz. I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment and keep you there for one moment. We're going to go to these live pictures of Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaking alongside the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's have a listen.
Education cooperation. Video, please. The Vision 2035, adopted by the two countries during the visit of PM Modi to UK in July 2025, paved the way for strengthening cooperation and collaboration in education sector of India and UK. Leading universities of UK are now planning to establish their campuses in India.
शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में भी दोनों देश मिलकर एक नया चैप्टर लिख रहे हैं.
Our India-UK Vision 2035 strategy, pledging to work more closely on areas such as climate, education and health.
9 universities of UK are setting up campuses in India, with the University of Southampton leading the charge by setting up a campus in India in July 2025 under the new Education Policy 2020. These campuses will bring global classrooms within reach of Indian students at home. This will also enhance their access to international research opportunities.
You're just looking at those live images coming out of Mumbai, that press conference and the statement that Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to be giving with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And no doubt the Prime Minister will talk about this Gaza ceasefire that was discuss the peace plan that was announced overnight. World leaders are currently reacting to this. We will go back to Mumbai in just a moment, but just in the last few moments, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has issued a statement via the Reuters news agency saying that he is pleased that the Hamas-Israel negotiations with the contribution from Turkey has resulted in a ceasefire in Gaza. Of course, that ceasefire hasn't been implemented as yet, but Turkey played a pivotal role in these discussions, in these negotiations over the course of the last few weeks. We saw Recep Tayyip Erdogan meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office after the UN General Assembly, where he was also at the head of the table when President Trump met with Arab and Muslim majority leaders. And Turkey, of course, has some leverage and influence over Hamas as well. So they were pivotal in these discussions. They sent a team to Sharm el-Sheikh over the course of the last few days to keep an eye on developments, as did a number of other countries. We saw the Qatari Prime Minister was there as well. So a number of countries, as President Donald Trump said, were involved in ensuring that this did get over the line for the Palestinian people, for the Israeli people. And joining me still on the program is Moaz, who lost both of his parents on October the 7th. I just want to bring you back in, and I'm terribly sorry. We may have to interrupt you again if Prime Minister Keir Starmer begins to speak, but I just wanted to reflect more on what you were saying about seeing lasting peace in this region, and how you were expressing how hopeful you feel in this moment that is, I'm sure, filled with a lot of sadness for you as well, given you lost both of your parents on October the 7th.
Yes, so thanks again. And I would also want to comment regarding the coming UK Prime Minister's statement and speech, that he gave some very powerful statement in the last 2 years. How he's going to support the civil society within Israel and Palestine. He was saying that as the Prime Minister, and before the G7 communique and announcement. But unfortunately, the UK has still done nothing to support a lasting peace and a reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians. And this is, and I'm calling you as a journalist and the media and the British public to make sure those statements of your Prime Minister are not only empty statements or something he say to gain more popularity, but he actually start acting. We must act in order that it's not going to be just a ceasefire and everyone will start preparing to the next war. We must start investing now to prevent the next war and create an alliance and partnership between Israelis and Palestinians, because the only way for a lasting peace is to make the enemies of the past into the partners of the future. And I think UK proved it so many times in the past. Like some of your biggest allies and friends nowadays, you are in war with them for decades, for even centuries. And we need your support, not just in statement and public gathering, but also in actual action and moves and steps to support both societies, that will be able to heal ourselves, that we will be able to recover, and will be able to model how dialogue, how negotiation can solve long and devastating conflicts.
Moaz, you spoke there about the statements put out by world leaders, by the likes of Keir Starmer. Have you been left disappointed over the course of the last 2 years, while we hope for better days going forward, but just reflecting back after October the 7th, when we saw 1,200 Israelis killed here in Israel, 251 hostages taken, which then led to the war in Gaza, which left 67,000 Palestinians dead. And we saw statement after statement coming out from global leaders, but no real action. Did that leave you disappointed and feeling hopeless throughout the course of the last couple of years?
So thanks for the question. So the short answer is no. I see myself as a leader. And as a leader, I cannot be disappointed. It's not something, it's not a quality or a feeling that I'm allowing myself to have. I was very sad for all those 2 years I've been sad, but I was always hopeful because since October 7th, I was approached by so many Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, citizens of Israel that supported me and my family. And we were able to build a partnership. If it's with individual like Aziza Busara or organization like the Bereaved Family Forum, Israeli-Palestinian bereaved families that are working together, if it's Combatant for Peace and many, many others, civil society organization. And together we created hope. We created hope in time of despair, in time of darkness, by envisioning a better future for both people and by acting day and night in order to make this future into a reality. And with the current deal and negotiation, this is what will allow us now to implement all our knowledge, all our experience in order to create a real and authentic and profound reconciliation process for both people, to create shared initiatives and shared life program that will allow the entire 14 million Israelis and Palestinians living in Gaza, in Israel, and the West Bank to live the life that we deserve, we all deserve. A life of security, a life of dignity, a life of equality. So I'm hopeful today as I'm hopeful every day, and maybe today even more.
Well, that's certainly inspiring. And before I let you go, I just want to ask you your thoughts on the fact that there are still many, many people who are pessimistic about this deal, pessimistic that it's going to hold, pessimistic that the other phases of this deal are going to be implemented because previous deals have always broken down. There's been some kind of violation. Do you think that this time this may hold in some way?
So it's up to us. It's just up to us. And yes, I'm sure there will be extremists that will try to sabotage if it's this deal or the next steps that will follow. And 2 weeks before the Good Friday deal was signed in North Ireland, and I'm meeting many North Islanders now, no one believed that it's going to last. No one believed it's going to end the century-long conflict. So I definitely realize and understanding why so many, if it's here in Israel and Palestine and around the world, are pessimistic now. But this is now why the international community and the peace movement and the civil society together to convince them that yes, peace is possible and it's within our hand and in our reach, but we cannot wait for others. We must work, each one of us must work, must do whatever he can. If it's small action or huge action, everyone should act in order to achieve a lasting peace, and we cannot wait for the other to make it for us. It's our accountability and our mission.
Moaz Inon, it's been really great to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I'm joined now by human rights barrister Adam Wagner. Thank you very much, Mr. Wagner, for joining us here on the program. We're getting a lot of thoughts today as people wake up to this news that developed overnight out of Egypt. Just your initial thoughts on what you're hearing.
It's a huge step forward, obviously, to have this kind of initial deal. We, as representatives of 7 British families who have hostages still there or have had hostages released or killed. We always say only you can be hopeful, but don't be too excited until we see people actually coming out of Gaza and landing in Israel. So that's what we're waiting for now.
Yeah, and just the families that you're speaking to, those you've represented, have, many people were hopeful. The hostages and the hostage families, those who have been released, have become one big community. How are they reacting to the idea that just in the next few days they will see the 20 living hostages being released and coming back to Israel?
I mean, you've got it completely right when you say they've become a community. Those 251 families of the 251 hostages who was taken on the 7th of October 2023 could have divided up into silos and campaigned individually for their own relatives to come out first, and they never have. They've always stayed together. They are the most extraordinary people. They've maintained their dignity and their resolve despite everything, despite Hamas sending them videos of their relatives being tortured, despite their relatives being murdered. I mean, they really are amazing. And there are 2 with strong British connections left there, Avi Natan-Or, who we think is alive, and Yossi Sharabi, who we think, unfortunately, is dead. So with our interactions with them, as always, it depends on the families. Some of them are bereft. Some of them are energized by campaigning. But as you say, the thing that unites them all is this sense of community and this common purpose towards returning of their relatives and towards peace.
Adam Wagner, we're really grateful for your thoughts here on the programme. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's just take you live back to Mumbai, where we can hear from the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
And my visit this week is about doubling down on the potential of our trade deal for the benefit of all of us. And that's why I brought a record 126 British businesses with me to India this week. We had to get a bigger plane to travel over here than the one we planned. But that delegation is some of our biggest, most iconic businesses and smaller and medium-sized businesses, but also leaders from education, some of whom are with us here, and sport and the arts. As I say, our largest trade delegation for a decade, and so my first as Prime Minister. So, of course, the destination for that had to be here, had to be India. Later today, the Prime Minister and I will convene a renewed CEO forum, and that was much discussed yesterday as a direct channel for business. There was a real buzz in the room yesterday that this forum is going to have real life breathed into it to embody the agreement that we've already reached, to ensure that the deal does deliver the opportunities that we want to see. And we are committed to that. And when we leave India later on tonight, I expect that we will have secured major new investments, creating thousands of high-skilled jobs in the sectors of the future for both of our nations. The UK and India stand side by side as global leaders in tech and innovation, and so we've also taken the opportunity to deepen our cooperation through our technology security initiative, with new commitments on AI, advanced communication, defence technologies, and much, much more. We're announcing a deal to make Bollywood films in the United Kingdom after a fantastic visit to the studio yesterday. And we're deepening our cooperation in education, as we've evidenced here on the film and with the people that we have in the room. It is the younger generation in India who will lead the charge to deliver on that 2047 target. The demand for the best quality higher education is very high. So I'm really pleased that we're announcing today that more British universities will be setting up campuses right here in India, making Britain India's leading international provider of higher education and delivering on our vision 2035 that we set out in July. These incredible economic bonds are the jewel in the crown of this relationship. But of course, our cooperation goes much wider too. And so we've had the opportunity to discuss issues of vital importance to global stability and security, including the situation in the Middle East. I strongly welcome the news that a deal has been reached on the first stage of the peace plan in Gaza. This is a moment of profound relief that we felt around the world, but particularly for the hostages, their families, and for the civilian population of Gaza, who have all endured unimaginable suffering over the last 2 years. I'm grateful for the tireless diplomatic efforts of Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, the United States, and many others in securing this crucial first step. This agreement must now be implemented in full, without delay, and be accompanied by the immediate lifting of all restrictions on life-saving humanitarian aid to Gaza. The UK will support these crucial immediate steps and the next stages of the talks to ensure the full implementation of the peace plan. The Prime Minister and I also discussed the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, the need for stability and security in the Indo-Pacific, and the need to cooperate in critical areas like climate and energy, including breaking away from dependence on fossil fuels. India is a global player. We sit together in the Commonwealth, the G20, and we want to see India taking its rightful place on the UN Security Council too. So we're committed to strengthening our strategic partnership. And in fact, as already been mentioned, our Carrier Strike Group is here in India right now, exercising with the Indian Navy, showing the strength of that relationship on defence and security, which we've discussed this morning. We want to take even further. And look, the whole thing, this particular partnership, goes much deeper. Because in the end, it is about people. The human connections between India and the UK are unique, forming what Prime Minister Modi has called the living bridge between our two countries. A bridge between people, a bridge between hearts, and in that spirit, Prime Minister, I want to express my deepest sympathies to all the victims of the Air India crash earlier this year. A terrible day and a tragedy for both of our nations. And it showed, frankly, that we are family. And I am proud this week that we're taking this incredible partnership between our two nations and making it stronger than ever for working people on both sides of that bridge. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity as we enter the festive period to wish the people of India joy and happiness and a very happy Diwali. Diwali ki shubh kam inai. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the press statements. Thank you for your presence, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated as the dignitaries exit the room.
You were just listening there to Prime Minister Keir Starmer as well as Narendra Modi giving their statements, and we heard there from Keir Starmer reacting to the news that came through overnight that a deal had been signed between Israel, Hamas and the United States after many efforts over the course of the last 2 years. But let's go straight to Mumbai and speak to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who is travelling with the Prime Minister for his reaction on what he heard in the room. Sam, good to see you. The Prime Minister issued a statement and then, of course, he more or less read it out again during that briefing.
That's right. As you can hear, we're in the middle of a very busy fintech conference here in Mumbai, and you saw the Prime Minister there standing next to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There is a sense that this massive global story is overshadowing the Prime Minister's visit here to Mumbai, a 48-hour whirlwind tour, bringing an enormous business delegation. That now not the main subject of conversation. Keir Starmer there, as you heard, and as you say, Yalda, reiterating the British position this morning, which is essentially to welcome enthusiastically the news overnight that there appears to be agreement on the first stage of the peace deal. He has called it a moment of profound relief, particularly for the families of hostages that have been held since October 2 years ago. And I think you could sense that as he was saying it as well. A couple of things that the Prime Minister is very clear to get across at the moment. First of all, the imperative of speed, and secondly, the need for humanitarian aid to get in and to get into Gaza. But beyond that, I think, Yalda, I think the British delegation, I think the Prime Minister, I think Downing Street know that we have had an important step today. The Prime Minister welcomed it in an unqualified way, but it is a step, and there are many more steps to have. And you can see that in the outline of what the Prime Minister's just been saying. He talked about the need for all sides to uphold the obligations that they're committed to and for all of the promises that have been made to be fulfilled. I don't think anybody in the UK delegation side is under any misapprehension that this will be tough and will continue to be tough. But the tone from the Prime Minister now is one to express relief and complete support for the American efforts and to urge all sides to comply as he backs Donald Trump's deal and welcomes the news overnight.
Sam, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. And as Sam was saying, the Prime Minister has said that this deal is a moment of profound relief, obviously, for so many Israelis. This entire nation has felt the pain since October 7th. And of course, the people of Gaza, who have suffered immensely. 67,000 Palestinians have been killed. Over 100,000 killed and injured, and those are the numbers that we are aware of. So many children left without their parents, orphaned and left with lifelong injuries. Let's just show you the skyline over Gaza at the moment. I believe we have some live shots of the skyline over Gaza. The ceasefire hasn't come into effect as yet, so occasionally we are seeing plumes of smoke. Of course, it's not at the ferocity, the bombardment that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years, frankly, since October 7th, which intensified at different points. And the Gazan people were told to move from place to place, from the north down south, then from the south back up to central Gaza. A lot of people now hoping that the bombardment will end soon. The Israeli Security Cabinet is going to be meeting to sign this deal off and agree to the Palestinian prisoners being released as well. Some 2,000 Palestinian prisoners will be released as part of this deal. Lists have been handed between the two groups, but that will probably take place over the course of the next few days. We are expecting hostages to be released over the weekend. Donald Trump said perhaps on Monday, but there are reports it could be as early as Saturday. But of course, the people of Gaza hoping that the bombardment will end soon too. And we did see celebrations overnight in Gaza, in Hostage Square as well in Tel Aviv. Mark Stone has our first report.
We have Marco Rubio.
The first indication of what would quickly become dramatic developments. Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, leaves a meeting in the White House, a whisper with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who then takes her seat near the president and scribbles on a notepad.
They're smart, but they're not smart enough.
He hands it to the president. It is an immediately iconic image. After days of speculation, the ceasefire deal previewed in a handwritten note visible just to the cameras. Very close, it says, underlined. Then, we need you to approve a Truth Social post soon so you can announce deal first. Just a few words, but they tell the story of this moment, that this is a moment President Trump wants to own, his deal.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
The meeting concluded, then it took a couple of hours, but the Truth Social post came. I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan, it says. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first step towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, both key players in the process, had only arrived at the negotiations in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, hours earlier. Their presence there, a sign of progress. And then emerged more images for the ages. Israeli, Arab and American negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh celebrating together. Qatar's prime minister and an Israeli general, quite the shot. And celebrations too in Gaza.
Is this the moment? It's incredibly quiet outside. It's the middle of the night. People haven't heard yet, but also it's incredibly quiet from the skies. Come on!
And of course, among the hostage families in Israel and beyond.
Since you became a president.
In the United States, some family members with Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and on the phone with the president.
Our home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
In a statement on X, the Israeli Prime Minister wrote, "With the approval of the first phase of the plan, all our hostages will be brought home. This is a diplomatic success and a national and moral victory for the state of Israel," he said. The president is expected to travel to the region in the days ahead, probably to Israel to coincide with the hostages coming home. Quite the optics for the self-styled peacemaker president who can now maybe claim that tag, if it all holds.
We need to look into the details, Mark.
Speaking to Sky's Trump 100 podcast, the longtime advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization reserved his optimism.
We still don't know what are the changes that were made in Sharm el-Sheikh. But if the details are based on what we already know, I think the first phase could perfectly work. The first phase spoke about a release of all the Israeli captives from Gaza and a release of Palestinian prisoners from the Israeli side, which is also an important point. Who are those people that are going to be released? What are the names? Will Maron al-Barghouthi, for example, the most popular Palestinian politician, be released from Israeli jails or not? I mean, that would be extremely significant. But once again, I think it's still too early to make a big celebration or just to declare that the war is over.
An Israeli commentator, Nadav Eyal, was equally uneasy about the long-term success.
I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen there. But what we do see here is an involvement for the first time of Arab countries from across the region. Moderate Arab countries, not so moderate Arab countries, and they're going to be involved in what's going to happen in Gaza, in rebuilding Gaza. And this gives me hope because they have the legitimacy that Israel does not have to operate within Gaza.
But the region has woken up today with an unquestionable shift after tens of thousands have died, compromise and agreement. Words so hard to find here for so long, they were found in Egypt overnight. Events over the days ahead will be pivotal. One man in the Oval Office is taking this as his moment. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Well, as we've been saying, global leaders have been reacting to the news that's come in overnight, but so have members of Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right cabinet, that coalition cabinet where he has members of the far-right in it. The Israeli finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has said that Hamas must be destroyed after the hostages have been returned, which would be a complete breach of this agreement. And of course, overnight, Hamas in their statement has said that Donald Trump, the international community, Arab leaders need to ensure that Israel and the Israeli government continues to stick by the agreements of this deal once they release the hostages. Donald Trump has continued to post on Truth Social over the course of the last week as these discussions have taken place, saying that all sides will be treated fairly. And of course, that is a concern for Hamas. They've been using these hostages as leverage over the course of the last 2 years since they took 251 of the hostages. At different points, some of the hostages have been released. They have 48 hostages in their possession at the moment. 20 of them are alive, 28 of them believed to be dead. Hamas has said they don't know the location of the bodies of some of the hostages. And Donald Trump has said that he would like to see the release of these hostages virtually immediately or within the 72 hours of the agreement. You're looking at those live shots over the skyline of Gaza. Let's go back to Kamali, who's picking up on the rest of the day's news.
Yalda, thank you for that. Of course, more from you and team later. And as we saw from those live shots of the skyline of Gaza, smoke rising on the horizon. It's not clear whether that's incoming fire and explosion from the ground, but shows just how precarious we are at this stage, as the first stage of the peace deal has been agreed to. I'm pleased to say we're joined by Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers. Matt, I mean, those pictures probably tell us, don't they? Good morning to you, sorry. Those probably tell us just how precarious we are at a situation, at this moment in this situation. But we're closer, perhaps, now than we have ever been.
Incredibly positive news. Obviously, we've got to see what unfolds, but everybody should want to see those hostages returned. Everybody should want to see that aid get into Gaza. Everybody should want to see the end to that pain and suffering and that awful humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So we welcome it. We hope we can deliver. Well, we pray that it gets where we want to see it.
I asked the government about this earlier, but I wonder what more the UK can do to try and ensure those three factors that, as you've laid out, are adhered to. And as I say, again, seeing that picture from Gaza, it causes one to worry that perhaps we're not going to see the outcome of this that we all want to see.
Well, it was difficult. I mean, you know, if the answer to this situation had been easy, it would have been solved long, long ago. Very difficult situation, but there's a pathway now. There is a pathway to peace. There is a pathway to the end of all this awful suffering, and we pray that it comes off.
Now, of course, the US, through Donald Trump, have been leading this process. They've got their 20-point peace plan. As far as the peace plan is laid out, the hostage release has to happen first and the ceasefire has to begin. We've also got this element of the disarming of Hamas. That's not in some of the earlier detail. How challenging is that going to be?
I think it's always going to be a precarious situation. I think dealing with Hamas is always going to be a very difficult thing. If you're dealing with a terrorist organisation, there are real challenges to that. But there is a route there now. There is a pathway. There's the opportunity for this thing to be resolved, and we've just got to hope and pray that it comes off.
And of course, the government have announced in the past few weeks they're going to recognise a Palestinian state. I know that that's something that the Conservative Party are opposed to, but that offers a way, doesn't it?
I don't think that supports this position at all. It doesn't. Well, we've said that the US was leading in this situation. They disagree with that as a position. The fact that you reward the people who undertook these terrible atrocities. But you know what? There's a pathway now. There's a pathway. We've got to support the US, support both parties in this. Be seen to be an independent and neutral player. Support that peace process, and yeah, hopefully we can get there.
You wouldn't reconcile from the position that we are in now, would you, in terms of that pathway to the peace, recognising that state in Palestine?
I think doing what Starmer chose to do in recognising Palestine as a state at that point in time is very much the wrong decision. We need to enter these negotiations, which they are, with all the cards on the table and be able to play out all of those cards, and actually handing that over to a terrorist organisation ahead of the game, it was not helpful. And I think the US would tell you it won't have helped in this situation.
He said as much in that news conference, didn't he? The aid getting in is the next element that you mentioned. Of course, it's going to go through the auspices of the UN and the Red Crescent. I asked this to the government: is there anything more that the UK can be doing to make sure that aid does get in?
I think the UK, throughout this, has to ensure that Israel complied with international law, be active in scrutinising their behaviour and holding them to account in the same way that we need to look at what Hamas are doing and how that comes off. I think we've got to be neutral, be seen to be supportive of the US and of both partners as they go forwards.
OK. Position clear on that, and we hope that it can stay. We've got until Monday, they said, when the hostages release at the latest, maybe as early as Saturday. Since I've got you, let's talk a little bit about what we saw yesterday at conference. Kemi Badenoch gave a speech. Has that saved her now until at least the May?
The big news, the fantastic news, the important news, the defining news that's really beneficial to this country as we go forward. I was thinking it was a fantastic speech, and not only was it delivered well, but actually the amount of policies that came forward. Kemi said we were going away, we were doing the detail, we were coming forward with real plans, and that's exactly what she's done. Plans for a stronger economy, plans for stronger borders. There's a way forwards. Real positive stuff.
And that retail offer of the removal of stamp duty is going to cost, what, $4 billion, is that right? Is that how much it's going to cost?
$9 billion, actually.
$9 billion.
But do you know what? It's all costed. That's the one difference.
Because you're going to save $47 billion, aren't you?
We're saving 47
billion. That's the difference. The welfare budget.
That's the difference with the Conservatives. We don't just tell you what we're going to give you. We're going to tell you how we're going to pay for it, and that's exactly what we've done. So with this stamp duty land tax, stamp duty, a big deal, actually. The IFS have said it is it's one of the biggest drags on growth. It makes the housing market less efficient. It makes the labour market less efficient. People can't go on to get those jobs. People can't get those homes that they need to support the family. It's really positive news for families across the country, really positive news for our economy. But more importantly, we know how we're going to spend, how we're going to pay for it.
They also said, IFS also said you should look at reforming council tax bans as well. It's not something you chose to do for perhaps obvious reasons. So look, is this now you've set yourself to the dividing line that you see the Conservative Party that once had Liz Truss as leader as being the party that can be trusted on the economy now? We
are the party that can be trusted on the economy. The other thing that Kemi said this week, is that we will apply the golden rule. So not only are we going to cover everything that we're spending, we're actually going to make sure that for every saving we make, those £47 billion of saving we've identified from welfare reform, from making sure only people who actually need it get a mobility car, from slashing the civil service back to the levels that it was long before the pandemic, reducing it by a third, meaning that money is spent in the way that people want to see it spent. £47 billion of savings, but for every pound that we save, half of that is going to be put into paying down the debt, because we all know the damage that Labour are doing to our economy. Businesses are closing at the fastest rate since the world economic crash. There are 14% more people unemployed, out of work, without the security of a pay packet, unable to provide for their families, relying on the state for support. That's the way forward. We're going to save this economy, and that's what will matter more than anything in the next few years when we see the damage that Labour have done.
We'll see. And the last point, you'll know that some of your supporters want there to be a pact with reform. Kemi Badenoch has said no. Some of your other colleagues are a bit more equivocal about it. Where do you stand on that idea?
We had a real grubbing at the last general election. This weekend, we put forward our pitch to the British people. Hopefully you guys are going to cover it extensively so that people not only know what a great speech it was, but they know the great policies that we've put forward, whether it be putting 10,000 more police on the streets, whether it be, trebling the amount of stop and search, whether it be what we're going to do for those high street businesses by giving them 100% relief on small business rates. And in fact, they'll save the Great British Pub as well. Lots to see.
Matt, you've made the case very eloquently. Thank you very much, as Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers there. All right, let's go back to the Middle East. Yalda Hakim picking up on that news of the day that the first stage, at least, of this peace plan has been agreed to. But Yalda, we were just seeing a moment ago, smoke rising on the horizon in Gaza.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've been showing live pictures out of Gaza, that the ceasefire hasn't actually come into effect. So even overnight, we were hearing that there were explosions taking place there. The bombing was continuing, and we did see even just now you're seeing those live pictures, that plume of black smoke over the Gaza skyline there. So the ceasefire hasn't come into effect, and it frankly won't until the Israeli Security Cabinet meet and approve it alongside the approval of Palestinian prisoners being released. But just in the last few minutes, we have had reaction from the French President Emmanuel Macron. He says France is ready to continue with its objectives of a two-state solution and at the end of the war. We'll continue talks this afternoon in Paris with our international partners. Now, France today was holding a summit, or is holding a summit, about the two-state solution and the future of the Palestinian people. They had invited the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but there was news that the Israeli partners had told him and told the White House that he shouldn't attend because it may derail the talks that were taking place in Egypt. So there isn't a U.S. presence in Paris for this conference that Emmanuel Macron is talking about. But we have been getting reaction from global leaders, including the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who said she welcomes this peace plan. Emmanuel Macron says that France is ready to continue with its objectives of a two-state solution and an end to this war. And they will continue to talk about these issues at the conference in Paris today, alongside Keir Starmer, who put out a statement. We heard him there in the last half an hour or so speaking in Mumbai as he stood alongside the Indian Prime Minister, saying this was a moment of profound relief. And it certainly is for so many Israelis and Palestinians. Let's just take a look at the 20-point peace plan in a bit more detail now. Now, it calls for all hostages alive and deceased to be returned and the bombing by Israel to stop. Israel would then release 250 Palestinians serving life sentences, plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after the October the 7th attacks. The text says Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence with Israel and to putting down their weapons will be given amnesty and allowed safe passage out of Gaza if they want to leave. Gaza would then be run temporarily by an apolitical Palestinian committee. This would be overseen by a so-called Board of Peace chaired by President Trump. Other board members are to include Tony Blair. Under the terms of the plan, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. The delivery of aid into Gaza will increase through the United Nations and the Red Crescent, with no interference from either side. The plan also contains a Trump economic development plan aimed at rebuilding Gaza. The proposal stresses that no one will be forced out of Gaza, or those who wish to leave will be able to do so and will be free to return. Well, earlier I spoke to Alex Rossi in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square about the reaction to the peace deal there. Have a listen.
It's taken 2 long and very brutal years indeed, but this has been the focus really of campaigning against the government to try to get Benjamin Netanyahu to change tack really with how he was prosecuting the war. His position, remember, Yalda, was always the only way that you're going to bring Hamas to the table and get an agreement is if they are under fire. They are feeling, the sword, or Israel's military sword, at their neck. The argument here that people were making was actually, no, you need to just get the hostages out first. You need to save the lives of those people. So here, I think, the people are here. There were plenty of people when the news was announced last night that an agreement had been reached. It's a little bit fewer people this morning. We had a bit of rain, which probably stopped people coming out, but we are expecting large crowds to gather. Have a look over here. You can see there's a digital clock. That, of course, has reminded and focused people's minds about what this is all about. Why coming here to protest? 733 days, 3 hours, 39 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting. That's how long the hostages have been held. Over here, you can see up here, there's still a picture. These are the 48 hostages that still remain in Gaza. That's what this, for these people here anyway, at least, it's been all about. 20 of them are still living. 28 of them are no longer alive. Now, it's the kind of understanding of the agreement that within 72 hours, the hostages will be released. I think that timeline is going to slip a little bit, certainly to get the bodies of the hostages that still remain in Gaza, because Hamas does not control some of those areas. They don't know where all of those bodies are, so they have to locate them. But we expect the 20 living hostages to come out pretty soon. Hamas is saying over the weekend, we heard from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he was saying that it could be Monday, but we expect movements on that very, very quickly. Now, we think the agreement will be signed sometime around midday in Sharm el-Sheikh. That, of course, will be conditional on the Israeli government approving it, a cabinet. That, of course, is expected, but only then, after that political process has been completed, can it be implemented. But really, I think overall here, people are massively relieved that they've got to this stage and that you are now going to see an end to the bloodshed in Gaza and a release of the hostages. They have campaigned and protested for this to happen for many days, weeks and months. And now, of course, it's coming true. The hostages, we expect, will be coming back to Israel very soon.
That was Alex Rossi reporting there from Hostages Square a little earlier. Now, just in the last few minutes, we're hearing from Egypt's Al Qahira News. They say that talks between the delegations are ongoing to finalize the Gaza agreement. So, of course, while we say that the agreement has been, approved by all sides, there are multiple phases to this. So the first part of this agreement has been agreed to. They're just finalizing some other points and details. So once we have more information coming out of Egypt, once the deal is actually signed, we will be bringing that to you. And of course, in the last few minutes, we also said that France's President Emmanuel Macron has reacted, saying France is ready to continue with its objective of a two-state solution and an end to the war. And we will continue talks this afternoon in Paris with our international partners. You're listening to the latest on the major breakthrough on a deal between Israel and Hamas. We'll speak to former National Security Advisor Lord Ricketts.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to Sky News. I'm Yalda Hakim, live here in Jerusalem. And welcome to our live and continuous coverage of this historic moment where a deal between Israel and Hamas is going to be signed at some point today. Let's bring in Lord Ricketts now, the former permanent Undersecretary of the Foreign Office. Lord Ricketts, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. There are so many people who have been pessimistic about this deal, saying that it's not quite there in terms of the detail and will it really be implemented. But the fact is, at this point, this is the deal that's on the table. And so far, right now, both sides have agreed to it.
Yes, and it's a moment of real hope and relief for the hostage families, of course, for the Palestinians who've been under bombardment for every single day for the last 2 years. But it is a moment that is very fragile as well. Yes, it looks like it's a deal, but it's a deal on the first phase of what will be a lasting settlement, with a great deal more to be worked out further down the line. But at least it now holds out the prospect of getting the fighting stopped, getting hostages home, prisoners released from the Palestinian side, and crucially, a surge of aid into Gaza for all those who are suffering. But it will only last if it can be followed up quickly by negotiations on all those difficult remaining issues. And of course, on the Palestinian side, there'll be worries that once the hostages are home, Netanyahu's appetite to continue will disappear. So they will be looking to Trump and to the Arab states and European supporters of this deal to keep the pressure on both sides to get from a fragile ceasefire to a lasting peace settlement.
Are you hopeful that will happen? Because what we have seen from the international community, from Europeans, over the course of the last 2 years has been mostly statements of condemnation rather than any kind of pressure or concrete action being taken. And there is this concern, as you say, that Hamas has used the hostages as leverage over the course of the last 2 years, that once they're handed over, this entire thing could unravel.
Yes, that is clearly the risk. I think the new factor here is the determination of Donald Trump to see this thing through. I mean, he's now put his reputation very firmly on the line, even more firmly if he travels out to the region on Monday to oversee the hostage release. He has now got a lot of credibility riding on this. Of course, he's got his ambitions for a Nobel Peace Prize. But where there has been a lot of goodwill, where there's been a lot of work already done by the Europeans and the Arab nations on what happens after a ceasefire, the plan, which is the so-called Trump plan, actually is largely what's been devised by Europeans and Arab countries: disarmament, a Palestinian technocratic authority, an overseeing board, oversight of the reconstruction and security that will follow. A lot of work has been done. Now it's turning that into reality. And again, I think we will rely on Trump's continued pressure and not having him kind of harvest the hostage deal and then walk away. We need Trump to keep the pressure up. We need all the other nations that have been involved, including Britain, France, that have been playing a leading role, to keep the negotiations going, to get the ideas on the table, so that we can translate this into something more lasting. I mean, I think the disarming of Hamas is going to be a very, very difficult period. I think the idea that Israel will pull back selectively and then eventually to peace lines which leave most of Gaza for the Palestinian Authority run, those are two areas of real concern. All sorts of things could go wrong. The ceasefire could break down. There probably will be isolated incidents of violence. It will need a lot of patience and a lot of commitment on all sides to keep this on the road in the coming months, because I think it is going to be a matter of months and months of hard negotiation to get from a fragile ceasefire to somewhere where the aid is flowing freely, where there's a prospect of some sort of Palestinian authority, where there is a policing of the Gaza Strip by a Palestinian police overseen by international forces. Just listing that set of issues shows the complexity of it, but let's today focus on the real moment of hope and opportunity. You know, a door has been opened here to a longer-term peace, and I think all the countries involved have got to work really hard to keep the momentum going that Donald Trump, to his credit, has established in recent weeks and months.
Yeah, Lord Ricketts, in the last few minutes, we also heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron, who has welcomed this deal and has said that France remains committed to a two-state solution. He's currently hosting a conference in Paris, which the Americans didn't turn up to because Israel had basically said it could derail talks in Egypt, so it had advised against that. Do you think there are multiple talks happening, you know, at the same time, and these need to be more coordinated between what the Americans are driving and trying to do, what the Europeans might be trying to do, and perhaps what the Arabs and the Israelis are trying to do?
Yes, I do. I think we need to get this focused. I think the Europeans and Arab countries worked well with Donald Trump up to the production of his 20-point peace plan, and a lot of their thinking is involved in that. It was interesting that Tony Blair was involved in those discussions. So, yeah, I think we need a tightly coordinated set of steps now between the Americans and this group of countries that has been supportive so that we move together. I suppose that the Americans were worried that when this hostage release deal suddenly crystallized, they didn't want to upend that. But now it's vital that we all work together and that there is one coordinating point where all this comes together, so that we keep our eyes on the target of moving this forward. Because if there are too many different negotiators in different capitals, in different groups, partly it will allow Israel and Hamas to play one off against the other. So they do need to be consistent focus. It's going to be a huge diplomatic effort. I do hope that there can be some sort of working group set up that will be responsible for taking this forward. And I hope to see figures like Tony Blair very actively engaged, because he does have credibility with both sides and enormous experience working alongside the British government.
Lord Ricketts, we're really grateful for your time and your thoughts there. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, as I said, in the last few minutes, we heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron, who said that they welcome this peace deal and they will work towards a two-state solution. Egypt's Al Qahira News says that talks between the delegations are ongoing to finalize the Gaza agreement. And we've also now heard from the German Chancellor, Chancellor Merz, on Donald Trump's Gaza deal, saying that they're still observing the situation, but they're confident the situation, there will be a solution that will be found this week. Still to come on the Breakfast Show, we have lots more. The latest on that major breakthrough, as I said, on a deal between Israel and Hamas. We'll hear from a Palestinian policy analyst, Yara Hawari.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr. Walker, you're anti-abortion, but two women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the president? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism?
I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro, can
Well, I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm Yelda Hakim, live here from Jerusalem. And of course, we are continuing our special coverage of the peace deal that Israel and Hamas are going to be signing at some point today. But let's just take you to live shots of the skyline over Gaza, where we can show you, I believe, that plume of smoke may still be there. We've been looking at it for the last hour and a half or so. There were reports of loud explosions in the early hours of the morning, even after that deal was announced, and we heard that the two sides had agreed to it and they'd be signing it at some point today. That ceasefire hasn't come into effect and won't come into effect until the Israeli Security Cabinet meets and approves it. But no doubt the people of Gaza are looking for this moment of relief, and so much joy and hope for Israelis as well, who are waiting for the hostages, the remaining hostages, 20 of them believed to be alive, 28 of them who have been killed. Their remains are going to be returned as well as part of this deal. Now let's bring in Dr. Yara Hawari, who's the co-director of Al-Shabaka, a Palestinian think tank. She joins me live now. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. We're just looking at those live shots over Gaza now. 67,000 people, we understand, have been killed over the course of the last 2 years, over 100,000 injured or killed, and those are the numbers that we know of. The latest figures that I saw, well over 18,000 children believed to be killed. And while many people in Gaza would be hoping that this will come to an end, they will have to deal with the trauma and the aftermath of what they've been through over the course of the last 2 years.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, as you laid out, over the last 2 years, we've seen the near complete destruction of Gaza. You know, in addition to the cost of human life, you know, we've seen so much infrastructure destroyed. 90% of schools have been destroyed. All hospitals have been subjected to bombardment. 92% of homes have been destroyed. So we're talking about a destruction on a massive scale, and one really that can only be described as deliberate. And, you know, you cited the numbers of the death toll there, but the likelihood is that that number will be a lot higher once the work to remove the rubble takes place, because a lot of people unfortunately remain trapped under the rubble and died under the rubble. And there are a lot of estimates that number is higher. The Lancet, the world's most prestigious medical journal, explains that in regular conflict zones, indirect deaths are usually 4 times the number of direct deaths. So we could be looking at numbers upwards of 250,000 people, Palestinians, who have been killed because of this genocide. So it really is staggering. And as you rightly pointed out, not only is this a destruction on a physical level, but the mental toll that this has unfolded upon the Palestinian people of Gaza will continue for generations. This is something that has affected Palestinians not only in Gaza, but wherever they are. Palestinians are a very small group of people. We all have friends and family in Gaza. And so this is certainly a trauma that will be borne for generations to come. And I think it will shape the region and the world, for that matter, for generations to come.
Yeah, Yara, we're hearing that perhaps the first phase of this will be implemented, which will include things like hostages being released, a ceasefire, so the end of the bombardment, aid flowing back into Gaza, because, of course, it hasn't just been the bombardment, it's the famine that people have been dealing with as well, the hunger and the starvation. Are people that you're speaking to hopeful that beyond that, the sort of disarmament of Hamas, for example, and Israeli troops not remaining? I understand that they're moving to a certain point that has been agreed to by both sides, and they'll halve their forces. But beyond that, those other points that have been discussed in the deal, is there hope that they will stick?
Well, the finer details are yet to be released, so we're not entirely sure of what this agreement will entail. So there are a lot of unknowns, and I think there is a fair amount of apprehension. Israel is notorious for breaking ceasefire deals. We know that Netanyahu says one thing to an international audience, and then he says something else to a domestic audience. And indeed, most recently, he promised the Israeli public that they would not withdraw their troops from Gaza. And we know also that when Israel has released Palestinian hostages, as is supposedly part of this deal, too often they're kidnapped and imprisoned only a few months after their release. So unfortunately, there are no guarantees here, and Palestinians remain apprehensive. Israel is not a good faith actor. This is a regime that has been found guilty of genocide by the highest court in the international legal regime, the International Court of Justice. And, as you reported earlier as well, Israel hasn't stopped the bombing. And as we speak, people are still being killed by Israeli bombardment. So if the ceasefire does go ahead, it will be a reprieve, certainly for Palestinians in Gaza who have been under bombardment for the last 2 years, almost continuously. But I think it's really important people understand that this isn't a peace deal. This is not going to lead to the end of the occupation of Palestinian land and Palestinian people. And I think, the second part of this ceasefire agreement, which we saw laid out a few weeks ago, is this notorious Trump plan, which only seems to cement the occupation and control over Palestinians in Gaza.
Yara, I also wanted to ask about Palestinian leadership because, whether it's the PA or whether it's Hamas, it does feel as though Palestinians don't have the leadership that they need and they deserve, that they've continued to be let down. Do you think that through this process, perhaps the sorts of people and names will start to emerge who will be able to guide the Palestinian people through a better future?
Well, I think that's been by design, Yalda. I think, the fact that Palestinians haven't been allowed to express themselves democratically, haven't been given the political space that they deserve, is part of the occupation. Hundreds of, even thousands of Palestinian activists, of young activists are currently being imprisoned by the Israeli regime. So this is certainly, a product of military occupation. And, as we see in the Trump plan, it's an absurd plan which repeats the same mistake that we've seen over the last 100 years, where Palestinians are denied the right to determine the contours of their own future. It's a plan that outlines this elaborate governance structure, which is chaired by Trump himself, and it has no Palestinians involved whatsoever. And worse yet, the cherry on the cake is that it seems that Tony Blair, a war criminal responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands in Iraq, and who has a very murky history in the Middle East, is supposedly taking a leading role in the day-to-day governance of Gaza. And so in this whole plan, there is no mention of Palestinians in Gaza having a say over how they are governed. And I think it demonstrates perfectly how deeply embedded in global discourse is the idea that Palestinians don't deserve sovereignty and they don't deserve a say in their own futures. You know, we have been so dehumanized that the notion of us deciding who governs over us, of not deciding who governs over us, has become totally acceptable. So I think really, you know, when Palestinians are finally able to decide that is when we will see a leadership that we deserve, and that will lead us to a better future.
Dr. Yara Hawari, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. We're now joined by James Smith, an emergency doctor who was aboard the Samud flotilla, which was intercepted by Israeli forces. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us here on the programme. Just want to get your reaction to things that have developed over the course of the last 24 hours.
Well, I think the first thing really to say is, as Dr. Yara and many others have said, those who've survived this genocide, those who have endured so much over the course of consecutive decades, are really those who should be commenting on what this means and where it falls short and what must come next. The voice of the Palestinian people now and historically has been completely sidelined. You know, efforts to end Israel's violence in Gaza absolutely must take precedence. The most immediate priority is to ensure the safe, effective and independent delivery of humanitarian assistance led by Palestinian organizations, such that we are able to avert even greater suffering. That can't be done while the Israeli military remains physically present or indeed anywhere near Gaza. And therefore you need this dual withdrawal of the occupying forces. But let's be absolutely clear here. Many dimensions of this proposal are simply legal, political and moral obligations. They aren't negotiables that Trump and Jared Kushner and Israeli negotiators can push around on a table. These are legally binding obligations that should have been incorporated a very, very long time ago.
Dr. James Smith, I'm so sorry. We've got about 40 seconds left on the programme, but we're grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we're going to continue our coverage of this deal. You're looking there at live pictures of the skyline over Gaza and, of course, the thousands of tents that have emerged over the course of the last 2 years, where people have been displaced multiple times. We'll be back with our special coverage on Breakfast in the next few minutes.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Breaking news this morning, Israel and Hamas sign off on the first phase of a Gaza peace deal. It's Thursday, 9th of October. A note, a whisper and a moment in history when the president and the world found out his Gaza peace plan had had a breakthrough.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
After the announcement, the celebrations, people taking to the streets in Israel after hearing that all hostages will be returned by Monday, with some reports suggesting as early as Saturday. Hugs and handshakes between negotiators in Egypt. A ceasefire will follow Israeli government approval, but already one minister says he won't vote for it. Hamas thanks Donald Trump and the negotiators before asking them not to allow Israel to evade or delay the deal. For Gazans, it signals the beginning of what could be the end of 2 years under siege. Welcome back with me, Yalda Hakim, live here in Jerusalem to our live and continuous coverage of the breaking news this morning. Israel and Hamas signed off the first phase of President Trump's Gaza peace plan. The development has been welcomed around the world as a promising step towards ending the war. And the moment the president found out a breakthrough had been reached was captured live during a news briefing from the White House. Mark Stone reports.
We have Marco Rubio.
The first indication of what would quickly become dramatic developments. Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, leaves a meeting in the White House, a whisper with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who then takes her seat near the president and scribbles on a notepad.
They're smart, but they're not smart enough.
He hands it to the president. It is an immediately iconic image. After days of speculation, the ceasefire deal previewed in a handwritten note visible just to the cameras. Very close, it says, underlined. Then, we need you to approve a Truth Social post soon so you can announce deal first. Just a few words, but they tell the story of this moment, that this is a moment President Trump wants to own, his deal.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
The meeting concluded. Then it took a couple of hours, but the Truth Social post came. I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan, it says. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first step towards a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, both key players in the process, had only arrived at the negotiations in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, hours earlier. Their presence there, a sign of progress. And then emerged more images for the ages. Israeli, Arab, and American negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh celebrating together. Qatar's prime minister and an Israeli general, quite the shot. And celebrations too in Gaza.
Is this the moment? It's incredibly quiet outside. It's the middle of the night. People haven't heard yet, but also it's incredibly quiet from the skies. Come on!
And of course, among the hostage families in Israel and beyond.
Since you became a president.
In the United States, some family members with Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and on the phone with the president.
Our home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
In a statement on X, the Israeli Prime Minister wrote, "With the approval of the first phase of the plan, all our hostages will be brought home. This is a diplomatic success and a national and moral victory for the state of Israel," he said. The president is expected to travel to the region in the days ahead, probably to Israel to coincide with the hostages coming home. Quite the optics for the self-styled peacemaker president who can now maybe claim that tag, if it all holds.
We need to look into the details, Mark.
Speaking to Sky's Trump 100 podcast, the longtime advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization reserved his optimism.
We still don't know what are the changes that were made in Sharm el-Sheikh. But if the details are based on what we already know, I think the first phase could perfectly work. The first phase spoke about a release of all the Israeli captives from Gaza and a release of Palestinian prisoners from the Israeli side, which is also an important point. Who are those people that are going to be released? What are the names? Will Marouane al-Barghouthi, for example, the most popular Palestinian politician, be released from Israeli jails or not? I mean, that would be extremely significant. But once again, I think it's still too early to make a big celebration or just to declare that the war is over.
An Israeli commentator, Nadav Eyal, was equally uneasy about the long-term success.
I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen there. But what we do see here is an involvement for the first time of Arab countries from across the region. Moderate Arab countries, not so moderate Arab countries, and they're going to be involved in what's going to happen in Gaza, in rebuilding Gaza. And this gives me hope because they have the legitimacy that Israel does not have to operate within Gaza.
But the region has woken up today with an unquestionable shift after tens of thousands have died, compromise and agreement. Words so hard to find here for so long, they were found in Egypt overnight. Events over the days ahead will be pivotal. One man in the Oval Office is taking this as his moment. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Well, as we've been reporting in the last hour or so, there has been international reaction to the news that came in overnight that a deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. Just in the last few minutes, Jordan's foreign ministry has said they welcome the Gaza agreement. We've also heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron saying France is committed to the two-state solution. And we heard from the German Chancellor who said that they are monitoring the developments and look forward to good news. You're looking at live pictures there of Gaza. But Alex Rossi has this update from Tel Aviv's Hostage Square.
It's taken 2 long and very brutal years indeed, but this has been the focus really of campaigning against the government to try to get Benjamin Netanyahu to change tack really with how he was prosecuting the war. His position, remember, Yalda, was always the only way that you're going to bring Hamas to the table and get an agreement is if they are under fire. They are feeling, you know, the sword or Israel's military sword at their neck. The argument here that people were making was actually, no, you need to just get the hostages out first. You need to save the lives of those people. So here, I think, you know, the people are here. There were plenty of people when the news was announced last night that an agreement had been reached. It's a little bit fewer people this morning. We had a bit of rain, which probably stopped people coming out, but we are expecting large crowds to gather. Have a look over here. You can see there's a digital clock. That, of course, has reminded and focused people's minds about what this is all about. Why coming here to protest? 733 days, 3 hours, 39 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting. That's how long the hostages have been held. Over here, you can see here, up here, there's still a picture. These are the 48 hostages that still remain in Gaza. That's what this, for these people here anyway, at least, it's been all about. 20 of them are still living, 28 of them are no longer alive. Now, it's the kind of understanding of the agreement that within 72 hours, the hostages will be released. I think that timeline is going to slip a little bit, certainly to get the bodies of the hostages that still remain in Gaza, because Hamas does not control some of those areas.
They don't know where all of those bodies are, so they have to locate them. But we expect the 20 living hostages to come out pretty soon. Hamas is saying over the weekend, we heard from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he was saying that it could be Monday. But we expect movements on that very, very quickly. Now, we think the agreement will be signed sometime around midday in Sharm el-Sheikh. That, of course, will be conditional on the Israeli government approving it, a cabinet. That, of course, is expected, but only then, after that political process has been completed, can it be implemented. But really, I think overall here, people are massively relieved that they've got to this stage and that you are now going to see an end to the bloodshed in Gaza and a release of the hostages. They have campaigned and protested for this to happen for many days, weeks and months. And now, of course, it's coming true. The hostages, we expect, will be coming back to Israel very soon.
Alex Rossi reporting there. And just in the last few minutes, we have received news that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, advisor to and White House advisor Jared Kushner, who's also the son-in-law, of course, of Donald Trump, they will both travel to Israel on Thursday night. So they will be here this evening. That's U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff alongside the White House Special Advisor Jared Kushner. They'll travel to Israel this evening. Now, speaking at a news conference alongside Narendra Modi in India, Sir Keir Starmer welcomed the news. Let's just have a listen.
I strongly welcome the news that a deal has been reached on the first stage of the peace plan in Gaza. This is a moment of profound relief that will be felt around the world, but particularly for the hostages, their families, and for the civilian population of Gaza, who have all endured unimaginable suffering over the last 2 years. I'm grateful for the tireless diplomatic efforts of Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, the United States, and many others in securing this crucial first step. This agreement must now be implemented in full, without delay, and be accompanied by the immediate lifting of all restrictions on life-saving humanitarian aid to Gaza. The UK will support these crucial immediate steps and the next stages of the talks to ensure the full implementation of the peace plan.
Keir Starmer speaking there in Mumbai a little earlier. Well, our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates gave his reaction from Mumbai. Have a listen.
Keir Starmer is here at the Global FinTech Festival in Mumbai. He's turned up with a large delegation of business people to talk to Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister. But all of that now overshadowed by the news in the Middle East and out of Washington that there appears to be a peace deal in the offing and agreement from all sides on that. So Keir Starmer, standing next to Narendra Modi, has been responding to that. He calls it a moment of profound relief. He welcomes what this will mean, what we think it will mean for the families of those hostages that were taken 2 years ago. In his remarks next to Narendra Modi, there are a couple of interesting things. He emphasised the need for all sides to fulfil their obligations and also, secondly, to do so quickly. Because I don't think they're starry-eyed in Downing Street. This is a big and positive step. That's why Keir Starmer is adopting the tone that he has done in the last few hours. But they know it is a stepping stone nevertheless, and there are lots of potential hurdles, and he knows that all sides need to continue to fulfil their obligations, to fulfil their promises on hostages, on prisoner release, and all the other sides. He welcomed the work not only of Donald Trump and the US, but countries like Egypt and Qatar for their role in bringing together and really making this peace agreement happen, or the latest stage of it. But Keir Starmer standing on the world stage alongside the Indian Prime Minister as he responds to the events going on in the Middle East and Washington.
Sam Coates reporting there from Mumbai. Let's just take a look at the 20-point peace plan in a bit more detail. It calls for all hostages, alive and deceased, to be returned and the bombing by Israel to stop. Israel would then release 250 Palestinians serving life sentences, plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after the October the 7th attacks. The text says Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence with Israel and to putting down their weapons will be given amnesty and allowed safe passage out of Gaza if they want to leave. Gaza would be run temporarily by an apolitical Palestinian committee. This would be overseen by a so-called Board of Peace chaired by President Trump. Other board members are to include Tony Blair. Under the terms of the plan, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. The delivery of aid into Gaza will increase through the United Nations and the Red Crescent with no interference from either side. The plan also contains a Trump economic development plan aimed at rebuilding Gaza. The proposal stresses that no one will be forced out of Gaza, while those who wish to leave will be able to do so and be free to return. Still to come on Breakfast, stay with us. The latest on that major breakthrough on a deal between Israel and Hamas will be joined by Professor Michael Clark, our defense and security analyst.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
We arrive, a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to our live and continuous coverage of the developments here in the Middle East overnight, where it was announced that a peace plan had been agreed to by Israel and Hamas. Let's bring in our defense and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark. Professor Clark, it feels like for the last 2 years we have mostly spoken about this war, the crisis that we've seen across the Middle East as a result of October the 7th. And it does feel like perhaps this is a moment, a historic moment, where this region can be cautiously optimistic that at least the first phase of this deal will go through.
Yeah, Yalda, I mean, it is a moment of cautious optimism, but it is a moment of genuine optimism. This is a very complex first stage. So there are four big elements. So a ceasefire, an exchange of a release of hostages and of maybe 2,000 prisoners in Israel, a withdrawal of the IDF to some agreed lines, and then the resumption of humanitarian aid. So all of those four things have got to happen more or less simultaneously and very quickly in the next 3 or 4 days. So that's a very complex first step, but as a first step, of course, it's very welcome. And this is, in essence, what Joe Biden was offering about a year ago. But the difference is, and I think the difference comes down to the Israeli attack on the Hamas leaders in Qatar on the 9th of September. That was a huge mistake, a strategic mistake by Netanyahu, and it didn't achieve what he wanted. But it so, I think, enraged the Trump administration, who were bounced into it. They were bounced into backing it when they really didn't approve of it at all. And I think that's what converted President Trump to the idea that he was going to lean on Netanyahu in a way that Joe Biden wouldn't have done. And that's what's made the difference. He's lent on Netanyahu to go for this phase. And all of the other states, and the Americans are learning from this, that they really do need their allies. They can't just insult them all the time. And so Qatar, who's very important to them now, Turkey and Egypt have done a sterling job. And then individual negotiators have gone in, and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, who carries a lot of authority from the president, along with a lot of other negotiators, have really done a good job, it seems, on the details. But there are immense details, even in getting to this first step, let alone getting any further. But, let's not be churlish. The first step, if it happens in the next couple of days, will be more than has been available or possible in the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and also, Michael, I'm just reading reports here that the United States and Qatar have given guarantees to Hamas that Israel will not resume its bombing once this ceasefire comes into effect. Ultimately, a lot of this is, whether either side trusts each other or not, they're going to have to rely on these negotiators to ensure that this doesn't collapse. And there will be moments where things become incredibly fragile, no doubt. And there will be moments where the ceasefire is breached and perhaps even breaks down. But it will come down to the likes of Donald Trump, the Qataris and others who are deeply invested in this now to ensure that it doesn't collapse and we don't go back to what we have seen over the course of the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, Yalda, you've lived through these sorts of things in many places in the world, and so you know the score as well as the rest of us, is that you can do a peace deal, and it may look triumphant when you do it, but somebody has got to stick with the deal day in and day out thereafter. And I think we can assume it won't be President Trump after next week. He'll have moved on to other things. So somebody, some group of people and a group of diplomats and some enforcers have got to stick with it day after day after day, because every day, as you say, there'll be accusations, there'll be breakdowns, there'll be backsliding, there'll be problems of specification. And the fact is, neither side in this case, neither the Israelis nor Hamas, trust each other at all. It's not that they've not got very much trust in each other, they have no trust in each other. And what Hamas say, they say, look, the Israelis broke the last ceasefire in March. We're just waiting. They'll break this ceasefire as well. And that, I think, a lot of people think that's entirely plausible. So the United States will have to keep leaning on Israel not to break the ceasefire. And equally, somebody will have to keep leaning on Hamas not actually to reconstitute itself. We still don't know about Hamas disarming. They've not said that they will. The Hamas people are not going to leave the Strip, leave Gaza under some sort of amnesty arrangement with Israel, which they won't believe because they believe that Israel will still come after them for the rest of their lives because that's what they do. So that lack of trust is something that will have to be compensated for by a big group of people, even while the stabilization force is put together and more arrangements are made. There's a great deal of work to do. You can't just declare peace and walk away and pat yourself on the back. You have to stick with it day after day after day.
Yeah, and to that point, you were talking there, Michael, about Hamas disarming. Just yesterday, I was speaking to the former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, who said it's almost delusional to think that in this region, and especially with Hamas, given their whole existence and resistance, as they call it, is based on Israeli occupation, and therefore they feel they need to remain armed. And so for them, the idea that you can completely disarm them or, disarm the small arms, he said was completely delusional.
Yeah, and Ehud Barak is very right. It is delusional because, the Israelis said before this operation started, back in November 2023, they said they thought there were about 25,000 Hamas fighters that they wanted to eliminate. And they think they've eliminated 20,000 of them. Well, about a month ago, they said that about 3,000 Hamas fighters were staying in Gaza City, and another 20,000, they said, had gone to the south. So even the Israelis themselves seem to believe, as the rest of us do, that they have created about the same number of guerrilla fighters for Hamas as they have eliminated. And that's logical. For every Hamas terrorist who is eliminated or killed, they've got cousins and younger brothers who then take up arms. So, in one sense, Hamas has lost terribly from all of this because its attempt to create a general war against Israel has failed miserably. The Gazan people have paid the price more than anybody else, as well as the Israelis, the 1,200 Israelis killed and the 251 hostages. A lot of people have paid the price, and Hamas has lost. But they are still in existence. They haven't gone out of existence. They have not been eliminated. And whatever this peace process says in the future about an independent group of technocrats who will build a new Gaza under the international supervision that President Trump will lead himself, whatever they say about that, nobody seriously believes that Gaza will not somehow be influenced by Hamas going forward into the future.
Yeah, which is why, so many were questioning Benjamin Netanyahu's claim that total victory meant the complete elimination of Hamas. You talked also there about the strike that Israel launched on Qatar, and perhaps that was the moment that turned Donald Trump. If we look at the last 2 years and how Israel got to a point where, it thought it could strike Qatar, a sovereign state, it was trying to hit a meeting of Hamas leaders who were discussing these sorts of negotiations and a ceasefire, and that operation essentially failed because those leaders survived, and it left both Qatar and the United States, angry about what had happened. But when you look at the various operations that the Israelis have launched, whether it was against Hezbollah or against Iran, they saw that as victory, decapitating their enemies across this region.
Yeah, and the Israelis were extremely successful in September last year, September 2024, at decapitating Hezbollah. They launched this, brilliant operation where they'd persuaded Hezbollah leaders over some years to take on a certain sort of handset for their communications, and the handsets were all very cleverly booby-trapped, and they injured and killed a whole generation of Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon, and then launched their attack because of that. And so that was a very good operation, which took Hezbollah off the board for the time being, but it doesn't take Hezbollah off the board in the long term. And then the Israelis, launched an assassination against Ismail al-Haniya, who was the ultimate leader of Hamas, when he went to Tehran, when he was in Tehran for the presidential inauguration. And so that emboldened them to think that they're communicating to their enemies that nowhere is safe. If you're an enemy of Israel, we're coming to get you. And that goes back to a very good book by Ronan Bergman called Rise Up and Kill First. And when he looks at the doctrine of rise up and kill first, which is a religious text, or it's based on a religious text, which Israel has adopted since 1948. If you think someone is trying to murder you, and the Jewish people have got very good reason to believe that over the centuries, if you think somebody is coming to murder you, rise up and kill first. And this doctrine of going after all of their enemies, wherever they are, the 1972 Munich massacre perpetrators, they went after them year in and year out. They went after them until they believed that they got all of them in a series of assassinations. And that goes deep into Israeli security thinking. And in the case of the attack on Qatar on the 9th of September, they overdid it. They took America for granted. Netanyahu took President Trump for granted, just the way President Putin takes President Trump for granted. They took him for granted. They thought they could bounce them into it. And it was a huge, huge strategic error. And when the history of this part of the Middle East crisis is written, I think a lot of it will center on the minute-by-minute arrangements whereby the Americans were told about it. They tried to inform the Qataris. They didn't tell them early enough. And the Hamas people escaped by accident because they left their phones in one room and went to pray in another room. And the Israelis struck the room where their phones were in. They killed Khaled al-Hayya's son, but not Khaled al-Hayya himself, who's now one of the negotiators. And it was a failure of an operation. But my goodness, it was a political failure, much deeper than that, which has changed the nature of the problem in the months since then.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary when you lay it all out like that. Professor Michael Clark, thank you so much for all of your analysis there. Well, still to come on The Breakfast Show, the latest on that major breakthrough on a deal between Israel and Hamas. We hope to hear from James Elder, who's working with UNICEF inside Gaza. Stay with us. Let's get more reaction to the breakthrough on a plan for peace in the Middle East and bring in our next guest. We can speak now to British-Israeli journalist Anshel Pfeffer. Thank you so much, Anshel, for joining us here on the programme. You and I have spoken in the past about Benjamin Netanyahu, his thinking, the way he's prosecuted this war over the course of the last 2 years. Just give us a sense of your reaction to this moment. Did you think that eventually we'd get here?
Well, it's taken 2 years, so it's been a long road to this. I think the most fascinating thing we've seen this week is that in just 2.5 days of talks in Sharm el-Sheikh, they managed to wrap up so many really complex issues, the hostage release protocols, a long list of Palestinian prisoners who are going to be released as well, the very contested withdrawal line of the Israeli army within the Gaza Strip, the entry of humanitarian aid in the next few days, and all this in just a couple of days, when we've seen so many long and inconclusive and failed rounds of talks over the past 2 years. And I think it really proves that even though the devil is in the details, sometimes what you need is political willpower, and Donald Trump supplied that by the truckload.
Do you think, Anshul, the way that you know and understand Benjamin Netanyahu's thinking, that perhaps he too politically needed this for his own survival?
Well, there are a number of factors which were motivating Netanyahu in this round. First of all, Donald Trump is a leader that he needs to show his own voters, and he needs to show the world that he has a close relationship with. And we know that behind the scenes, Trump was losing patience with Netanyahu, and that he's been pressuring him in the last few weeks very intensely to get to this deal. So Netanyahu has to now show that this is something that he was 100% coordinated with Trump, and it was even in a way his idea. That's obviously not true, but that's part of the narrative that he has to sell now. Israel is about to enter an election year. Now, we don't know yet exactly what date the election will be on. That's partly due to the inner machinations of Netanyahu's coalition. But Netanyahu couldn't, I don't think he could have got to the elections with Israeli hostages still in Gaza. So he needed to deliver on that. The Israeli public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of ending the war and getting all the hostages out. And that includes also many of Netanyahu's own voters. So I think together with this pressure from the Israeli public and the pressure from Trump, this was the moment Netanyahu had to finally agree to get on board with the ceasefire.
Anshul, already we've heard from Israel's finance minister that he won't be voting for this when Israel's security cabinet meets in the next few hours. That doesn't come as a surprise. But do you think that perhaps as we move through this process, they will continue to be sort of spoilers in this for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, I don't think there can be spoilers on this deal. This deal is, I don't think there's any way back from this deal. And you're seeing between the lines of Bezalel Smotrich's statement, the man you just mentioned now, that he's basically accepting that this is happening. And he's now positioning himself also for the election. So he has to run to the right of Netanyahu. But at the same time, he also has to be coordinated with Netanyahu, because his only chance of getting back in power is in partnership with Netanyahu. So he's got this line that he doesn't like this deal, but he's happy that the hostages are coming home, and he will, so he says, continue pressuring Netanyahu to go back to the war after the hostages are released. Now, we know that's not going to happen. Donald Trump is almost for certain not going to allow that to happen. But this is just posturing for an election. He needs to appeal to the constituency in Israel, which is to the right of Netanyahu, that minority of Israelis who wanted the war to continue and who thought that there was a chance to perpetuate Israeli occupation of Gaza. Now, that doesn't seem to be happening anymore, but that is still, those are still the voters he's appealing to. And since Israel is a multi-party system where the next government, and all governments, and certainly the next government, will be formed by a number of parties, he can afford to take a position which is more extreme than that of Netanyahu, because there are voters there. Now, whether together with Netanyahu he can form another coalition, that doesn't seem to be the case from the polls right now, but this is politics, so he's trying to get what he can.
Anshul, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Well, after the news, we saw the immediate reaction from James Elder, a UNICEF spokesperson working inside Gaza. Just have a look at this.
Is this the moment? It's incredibly quiet outside. It's the middle of the night. people haven't heard yet, but also it's incredibly quiet from the skies. Come on!
Well, that was James Elder there talking to his followers on his Instagram account. Let's bring in James because he joins us live now from Gaza. It's always really good to talk to you. James, you've been sort of a voice of hope and at moments sort of giving us a sense of the truth of what was going on the ground. I know that you're still in Gaza, you're making your way out, but just tell us a bit more about when you first heard, because you put that lovely video up that brought so much hope.
Yeah, it's immense. You know, I've spent so much time just talking to Palestinians about what they want, and it's the same refrain time and time again, Yada. It's just, it's hope, it's peace, it's dignity, it's go home, it's rebuild, all those things. But hope is the mainstay. As a Palestinian man said to me yesterday, look, James, we've had so much taken away from us, our homes, our loved ones, the ability to keep our children safe, the ability to feed our children. Hope is the one thing we have agency over, and something feels different right now. Let's see, right? We're a long way from a permanent ceasefire, and a lot of damage has been done, particularly if you look at the bodies of children and malnutrition. So, you know, there is a lot of work to do, but there's joy out there right now. There's joy in the faces of people. There's joy in children on the streets. It's a day that should never, ever have taken. We should never have got to this point of, 20,000 girls and boys being killed. But here we are, and if this is a real ceasefire, then this is something Palestinians will build on physically, mentally, everything. So it is a wonderful, wonderful day, and that is exactly what someone said to me a couple of hours ago.
James, we were looking at, well, we are still looking at live pictures of the skyline over Gaza, and we could see a plume of smoke. Of course, this ceasefire hasn't actually come into effect. So, frankly, the bombardment has continued. Can you just give us an idea of what's been going on in terms of that? Have you been hearing it? Can you see it? Are people still scared that this is going to continue until the deal is properly in effect?
Absolutely. There's no doubt people feel that way. I was really surprised. I mean, not surprised, it just keeps going. But yeah, there was an airstrike an hour ago, 200 metres from where I was. Now, Palestinians, sadly, are so used to the sound, those sounds. So right now, it remains a very different day. It's a different day because of the promises being made. And that's something they haven't had. Their hope is that tonight they can look the little one in the eye and promise them that there will be no airstrikes overnight. But it's a little bit insane, no, that the airstrikes continue even though we are so close, so close. I mean, what else is there to hit at the moment as well? You know, Yalda, I was in an area 2 days ago that was right on the edge of a red zone, and there were families there, thousands and thousands of families. And then 2 nights ago, we had a heavy bombardment in Western Khan Yunis. That's the exact area that Israel has been telling people to go to for safety. So, it's hard to articulate exactly the fear that families have felt for a long, long time. Right now, they are extinguishing that fear with a sense that this might just be giving them a few days of respite, that children might just get a moment to heal, to recover, to rest.
Yeah, James, we are getting reports that the signing of that Gaza ceasefire is expected to happen shortly, almost imminently. We'll have to wait and see because, of course, whilst we're talking about the hope, no doubt many are also concerned that this could break down at any moment. And people who have been living in these tents, displaced multiple times over the course of the last 2 years, will also have to think about rebuilding their lives. We'll talk a little bit about the mental health in a moment, but just physically rebuilding their lives, their homes, their schools, that is going to be a massive task ahead for them.
Unfathomable, Yalda, immense. We're talking 4 out of 5 homes damaged or destroyed. Families like anyone else in the world that spent years and decades saving to build that and then in a flash turned to rubble. 4 out of 5 homes, and that's before this past month when there's been the full assault on Gaza City. And by that I mean Israel using old personnel carriers packed with explosives to destroy tower blocks. So it's hard to imagine, but there is that connection. Palestinians will go home. They will build again on whatever remains, but we can't understate how much of a toll it is, and we can't understate how many people right now are spending each day waking up in tents. And we have winter coming. Today it was raining just a little bit earlier, just enough to worry us, because there are thousands of people living in wadis that will flood. So yeah, look, we're not going to extinguish today's hope, but the reality still is that people are still going to get one meal a day at best. Children are still going to chase water trucks. They're still going to go to bed in tents. So this should never have got to, breaking up.
Yeah, no. Please finish your sentence. Sorry, it was breaking up a second ago. Go ahead.
No, just that Palestinians don't quite understand the level of damage that's occurred to their homes. And as you said, Yalda, on mental health, child psychologists have said to me one of the greatest fears they have is when this does stop, when families process what they've lost, when they go back and they see that rubble. That's about to happen. We're entering uncharted territory with trauma, but we can't address it until the bombs stop. We really, really hope and pray that's today.
Well, we look forward to continuing to talk to you, to get your thoughts, and thank you for all of the work that you have continued to do in Gaza over the course of the last 2 years. James Elder, thank you so much. Well, still to come on The Breakfast Show, we'll have much more. Do stay with us. The latest on that major breakthrough on a deal between Israel and Hamas. We hear from someone who lost both of his parents in the Hamas attack on October the 7th.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380.
better. Thank you.
Welcome back to our live and continuous coverage of the developments here in the Middle East. I'm Yalda Hakim, live for you in Jerusalem. Now, in the moments after the news of the agreement broke, there were celebrations in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. But for some, it was bittersweet. Earlier, I spoke to Israeli peace activist Maaz Inon, who lost both his parents in the Hamas attack on October the 7th. Have a listen.
Yes, so thanks again. And I would also want to comment regarding the coming UK Prime Minister's statement and speech, that he gave some very powerful statement in the last 2 years. How he's going to support the civil society within Israel and Palestine. He was saying that as the Prime Minister, and before the G7 communique and announcement. But unfortunately, the UK has still done nothing to support a lasting peace and a reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians. And this is, and I'm calling you as a journalist and the media and the British public to make sure those statements of your Prime Minister are not only empty statements or something he say to gain more popularity, but he actually start acting. We must act in order that it's not going to be just a ceasefire and everyone will start preparing to the next war. We must start investing now to prevent the next war and create an alliance and partnership between Israelis and Palestinians, because the only way for a lasting peace is to make the enemies of the past into the partners of the future. And I think UK proved it so many times in the past. Like some of your biggest allies and friends nowadays, you are in war with them for decades, for even centuries, and we need your support not just in statement and public gathering, but also in actual action and moves and steps to support both societies that will be able to heal ourselves, that will be able to recover, and will be able to model how dialogue, how negotiation can solve long and devastating conflicts.
Maaz, you spoke there about the statements put out by world leaders, by the likes of Keir Starmer. Have you been left disappointed over the course of the last 2 years, while we hope for better days going forward, but just reflecting back after October the 7th, when we saw 1,200 Israelis killed here in Israel, 251 hostages taken, which then led to the war in Gaza, which left 67,000 Palestinians dead. And we saw statement after statement coming out from global leaders, but no real action. Did that leave you disappointed and feeling hopeless throughout the course of the last couple of years?
So, thanks for the question. So the short answer is no. I see myself as a leader. And as a leader, I cannot be disappointed. It's not something, it's not a quality or a feeling that I'm allowing myself to have. I was very sad for all those 2 years. I've been sad, but I was always hopeful, because since October 7th, I was approached by so many Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, citizens of Israel that supported me and my family. And we were able to build a partnership. If it's with individual like Aziz Abu Sara, or organization like the Bereaved Family Forum, Israeli-Palestinian bereaved families that are working together, if it's Combatant for Peace and many, many others, civil society organization. And together we created hope. We created hope in time of despair, in time of darkness, by envisioning a better future for both people and by acting day and night in order to make this future into a reality.
That's Israeli peace activist Maaz Inon speaking to me a little earlier. Well, joining me now live is our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. And Adam, we were monitoring this frankly, from about late last night, when news started to trickle in that it was going to happen in 24 hours. Then they said it might happen tonight. There is a lot of hope being pinned on this now from both sides. We've seen celebrations on both sides, but we also know that this is still a very fragile moment.
It absolutely is. It's a deal that has been pushed along by optimism and I think also by weariness at war. So many people wanted this war to come to an end. And yet, what we have is effectively a ceasefire, not necessarily a full peace deal. And already I see Bezalel Smotrich, one of the members of far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, has said he's going to vote against this, that he thinks that Israel should have been pushing for the destruction of Hamas and the takeover of Gaza. Now, I don't think for a moment that that reflects all of Israel's political opinion, certainly not popular opinion, but that could bring down the government ultimately. I still think this deal will get through, and in fact it will get through because Yair Lapid will corral the opposition into supporting it. But it is something that we shouldn't say is definitely permanent, because there are the cynics already saying, well, Benjamin Netanyahu will get what he wants. He'll get the hostages back. But then what if he wants to go back into Gaza? What if he wants to resume military operations? The flip side, I would say, of that is that in order for Hamas to have agreed to this deal, they surely must have had cast-iron guarantees from the Americans that they will effectively have their back, that they will push through the things, some of the things that Hamas want. And the second thing is, this country doesn't want more military action. It really wants to see this war finished. It wants its hostages home, and it also wants its young conscripts back at home with their families.
Adam, thank you so much. And of course, we will be coming back to you throughout the day for more analysis. Let me take you back to those live shots over the skyline of Gaza, where we were speaking earlier to UNICEF's James Elder, who said people are finally smiling a little bit. They're still very worried, but they're hoping that this deal will finally be able to go through. We'll be back in the next few minutes, but goodbye for now.